So many Catholics I know have grown up going to church or going to a Catholic school, learning all the right things and going through the motions, but with no idea why they're doing it. It's like we've been sacramentalized, but not evangelized, churchified, but not changed. There's something essential missing, but we can't quite put our finger on it. Does that describe anyone you know? It's like there's a big pile of wood all ready to go, but it's damp from exposure to the rain. If that describes you, then I'm here to say your faith doesn't need to stay that way. It can't stay that way. And the fuel you need to light it up, for it to come alive and burn brightly and just make sense, is the Holy Spirit. Think about fire for a second. We use fire to survive, to stay warm, to cook with, and to create energy. It's powerful when it rages, and it cleanses the dead wood that's lying around and resets the whole environment for a new season of growth. Should be no surprise that the Bible then talks about fire as one of the main images to describe the Holy Spirit. It was 40 days after Jesus had ascended into heaven, and he told his disciples to stay in Jerusalem until you have been clothed with power from on high. On the day of Pentecost, it says, all the believers were meeting together in one place. And then suddenly, there was a sound from heaven like the roaring of a mighty wind, and it filled the house where they were sitting. And then what looked like tongues of fire appeared and settled on each of them. What did that look like? And everyone present was filled with the Holy Spirit and began speaking in other languages as the Holy Spirit gave them the ability. What was going on here? This group of disciples, about 120 men and women, by the way, including Jesus' mother Mary, had been constantly praying and surrendering their lives to God, asking to be baptized in this new way that Jesus had promised. Not with water, but with the Holy Spirit. And suddenly it's like a fire was lit. The wind that filled the room was like God bending down to blow on their hearts and to fan the Spirit into flame, to the point that it burst out their mouths with the gift of expressive praise and this new spiritual phenomenon called the gift of tongues. Basically, what they were experiencing was so good, they couldn't keep it inside any longer. It had to get out. Where once they were weak, now they were strong. Where once they were scared and hiding in fear, now they were filled with boldness and courage. Peter stood up and preached up a storm, and about 3,000 people got baptized on that day, added to their number. Their fear was replaced by faith. But it had nothing to do with themselves. It was the power of the Holy Spirit setting their dead wood on fire. It says that a massive crowd rushed around, drawn in amazement by hearing the disciples preaching the gospel in their own language, which was a prophetic sign that the gospel was intended to go to the ends of the earth, to every tribe and nation and language, right? And that one of the main things the Spirit does is to help us communicate the good news in a way that people can understand. It also said that some of those listening, however, sneered and made fun of them, saying, they've had too much wine. You know, when it comes to the Holy Spirit, there's always going to be cynics. There's always been voices that oppose the action of the Spirit. Jesus had his fair share. When the Pharisees accused him of driving out demons by the prince of demons. Man, jealousy's a curse. Every saint who ever lived had to endure opposition to their cause. Just ask Mary MacKillop. I think one thing we need to ask ourselves is there a cynic living inside me? Is there a part of me that is fearful or suspicious about all this Pentecost Holy Spirit stuff? If there is, tell that cynical voice to take a back seat. The Apostle Peter stood up to defend what was happening. He said, hey, these men aren't drunk like you think they are. It's only 9 o'clock in the morning. No, this was what the prophet Joel spoke about. And he went on to explain how it was all backed up from the scriptures, that God had foretold it was his plan to pour out his Spirit on all flesh, men, women, the old, the young, slaves and free, everyone. And guess who else that plan includes? You. I remember when I was baptised in the Holy Spirit. I was about 23 years old, in the basement of a London church called Kensington Temple. I was travelling overseas, I was exploring my faith and looking for more. I'd been reading the book of Acts in the Bible, and I knew there had to be more than what I'd grown up with in my small town, in my Catholic parish. I also knew I had no power to make some personal changes that I really knew I needed to make. I'd prayed before to be filled with the Holy Spirit, and I knew He was with me, but it was more like a subtle presence. I was hungry for more, and this time was different. Some other Christians whose faith I was really attracted to were meeting together one Sunday night, and they invited me to gather around and to pray with them. When all of a sudden they started praying out loud in different languages, just like the disciples did on the day of Pentecost. This was brand new to me, blew my mind. So I was pretty freaked out, but it was too late for me to pull out. So I just began using whatever words I could think of at the time. I was like, praise you, Jesus, praise you, Jesus, praise you, Jesus, praise you, Jesus, until it got to the point where I couldn't think of anything else to say. And this invisible presence just rose up inside me and it started spilling out of my mouth in syllables and sounds that I was not making up. And I was like, what the hell? It was incredible. It was amazing. It was life-changing. It was like I just shifted gears from manual into autopilot. It was like driving a Ford and then getting in a Ferrari. I just can't describe it. I was overcome with the power of the Holy Spirit. And if there was a word for it, I was baptized. I was immersed in the Holy Spirit in a way I had never experienced before. You know, the main thing that happened from this experience is not that I spoke in tongues, although that was definitely very cool. But the main thing was that from this day on, I was never the same. I was filled with a new confidence, a new joy, and a new sense of purpose that set my life on a whole new path. One that's led me here today, telling you all about it. When I said that the Catholic Church has been sitting on this secret for 2,000 years, okay, I was exaggerating a little. The reality is, thousands of saints and reformers, clergy and lay people have all discovered this secret powder keg called the Holy Spirit. And their lives have exploded as a result, burning like beacons of light, drawing the attention and admiration of the world all around them. People like Catherine of Siena, Teresa of Avila, Francis of Assisi, and Protestant reformers like Charles Wesley, William Booth, right through to the Pentecostal movement of the 20th century. It's been a river constantly flowing, at times underground and viewed with suspicion, but in the last 50 years publicly embraced and endorsed by the Catholic Church as a new Pentecost, one that's desperately needed for a new evangelization of our world. Here's the deal. No fire, no faith. You need the fire of the Holy Spirit if your Christian faith is ever going to make sense. Today, Pope Francis is standing up and defending the gift of the Spirit, the baptism in the Spirit, just like St. Peter did on that first Pentecost morning, who said, "This gift is for you and for all whom the Lord our God will call." Jesus didn't give the Holy Spirit just for 12 men 2,000 years ago. The promise was for every follower of Jesus to be filled with this river of the power, presence, and person of the Holy Spirit. In the next video, we're going to talk about how the Holy Spirit is like a river you can ask God to fill you with today. I'll see you there.